He's preparing to stream the meeting. This is exciting.
It's streaming on YouTube. This is crazy. I have so many questions about this.
There we go. Okay, we are live. Everybody, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's time for the Rewritables. I am Kevin Bauer. With me today, as always, my co-host, Mr. Tim Keck. Tim, how you doing?
Wow, here I am. It's exciting to be here. Kevin Bauer doing the Rewritables. I can't wait. A spinoff, a trick, a twist on one of our favorite podcasts, the Rewatchables. But this time, we're rewriting stuff, Kev.
We're rewriting everything. This is the show where we talk about movies that should have been way better than they actually were. We're going to try to find a way to rewrite it to salvage some of that garbage that got lost in the shipwreck. That's kind of a mixed metaphor thing going on, but yeah. So we're going to start off today with X-Men Dark Phoenix, Fox's 2018 complete and total summer blockbuster disaster. Also, gotta say, Tim, you've been frozen. I don't know if you said anything in the past 2 minutes.
Oh, really? Because I've been talking this whole time. I keep hearing you, but then you keep stopping every once in a while. Like, it took me a while to see your coffee cup.
Oh,
like, it was going, and then you just kind of froze like this, and then you're a second later drinking coffee. I also have my coffee. I've got my coffee in one hand. I've got my water in another, both in Yeti containers that I say were gifts, but I bought them for myself. And
Tim, I gotta tell you, I'm also rocking that coffee and water setup. It's because sometimes you're gonna get parched. You need a little liquid in your throat. Can't all be coffee. You're gonna get too jacked up on that.
It can't all be coffee. That's coffee somehow makes me feel worse.
And you know what? I think it can't all be coffee might be the perfect thesis for describing what is wrong with X-Men Dark Phoenix.
It can't all be coffee.
Has so much shit going on. I feel like if you took away the aliens entirely, this movie could probably work. Or if you left the aliens and took away the infighting among the mutants, it could also still work. But trying to pull all this off in the same movie, it's 100 hats on top of 100 hats.
It's crazy. I think every time I've been like a little bit disappointed with like a lot of these X-Men movies. But like Apocalypse was kind of disappointing. Future Past is like, there's something, I don't know. Like, you and I both love the Marvel movies, right? You see a Marvel movie and I'm always like satisfied when I leave a Marvel movie. And somehow that's like very hard for these other like comic book movies to capture. So, but rewatching this one, I gotta tell you, I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time.
Which
and I think part of that
to
is
me.
just like, man, I think I just like X-Men. I just like these characters and I want to see Magneto do stuff. And there's cool things in this movie, man. The fights, the train fight, initially I was not a fan. They do some cool stuff in it. Nightcrawler goes crazy, stabs some dude in the neck with his tail. I mean, there's cool moments in this movie. They're just bogged down by shit. And I was watching it and I'm like, you know what? I actually enjoyed this movie. It's kind of fun. I like these characters and all of that. And then I started scrolling through like some of the notes we had, like the last time we talked about this movie and like some of our ideas. And I was like, oh yeah, this movie could have been awesome. Like, it could have been awesome. They had all the elements for it to be great, and it is not. It is not a great movie. But man, these actors are great, except for the guy who plays Beast. That guy can go fuck off. I hate him. I don't know what it is about that dude that people like seeing him and stuff. But man, he is just a weak-faced individual. I can't stand him. But everybody else on there, everyone else in the cast is great. I mean, Magneto is insanely cool. Sophie Turner was better this time, even though I think she is probably a weak point in the movie. But I'm just starting this off by saying there is so much to like here, and there's so much potential here. And I think the big thing for both of us is that it doesn't reach the heights that it could.
No, it doesn't even come close.
No.
So, okay, let's break down real quick I think we need to start with a plan of attack here. So, as we've said, like a lot of shit happens in this movie. If you haven't seen the movie and you are afraid of a spoiler, I have no idea why you tuned into this. Let's talk about what goes on in this movie. General premise is that Jean Grey, a member of the X-Men, they're out in a mission in space. Jean Grey absorbs this massive energy force that was threatening astronauts out in space.
Okay, well, so I know you're like doing like a recap of the movie, but we did skip over the beginning of the movie, which sends it in a completely different direction, I feel like.
That's a very good point. So I should wind it back right there and say I could already feel that I should have brought this up. The first time ever we are seeing the X-Men being hailed as superheroes. Is
I
that what you're
wasn't
talking
even
about?
thinking that.
Oh, what
I
are you
was thinking the opening of the movie, right, is Jean Grey as a kid in her parents'
Oh.
car,
Oh shit. Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
going through one of the most traumatic experiences. Maybe like I mean, it is a traditional superhero experience, right? The
Are you talking
loss
about
of like
hearing Steely
parents.
Dan on the radio and knowing that you didn't get to catch the very beginning of that wonderful, wonderful Steely Dan song?
She just really wants to hear Steely Dan, right? Isn't that?
I would say that's her motivation throughout this entire movie.
Remember went through trying to recapture it. That would be a more compelling story than this one. But we see initially the car radio, they get into a car accident. We see that she is in the hospital and she is alone and she has nobody, and Professor Xavier comes to pick her up. And the opening line, like the last line before we see the title sequence, and that's the beginning of the Dark Phoenix. Like, what the heck is that? That's nothing. It's like it's simultaneously enough trauma and like character development to drive the entire movie, and yet it's like neglected for it doesn't come back. It doesn't make sense. It's not what the movie's about.
No.
I'm mad about it. I hated that opening scene so much. I was so mad.
So, I mean, let's go ahead and list it right there. Plot thread number one is Jean's family drama. Like,
Yeah.
we can go ahead and like bolt that in as one of the things that this movie is trying to juggle in the air at the same time. God, it's so frustrating. Like, again, if you just it's like that rule about jewelry from Coco Chanel, where she's like, before you leave the house, take a look at yourself in the mirror and take off one piece of jewelry. This movie needed to take a look at itself before it left the house and take off 4 subplots. Tim, you're frozen again, but I can only imagine you're laughing very hard at that joke that I made.
Well, I think that that should be the movie. They set it up like it's going to be the movie. Is that she has this trauma, and it ends up becoming a detail in the movie when I think that it's more than enough to inform the character.
If we're
talking about like what the Dark Phoenix is, and part of me thinks that like not to get too diluted all the way, but if we're talking about X-Men like material, X-Men Last Stand has already explored this Dark Phoenix storyline to some extent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not that I think it's not necessarily canon in this X-Men universe, but still, we've seen aspects of the Dark Phoenix saga. That's I guess the Dark Phoenix saga itself in the comics, like the source material for this movie, is part of the problem with the whole thing. Is just that there's so much, and trying to condense everything that happens in that whole story arc in the comics into one movie, you're never going to satisfy everybody. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It would be like trying to squeeze like an entire TV series into the span of one movie. There's just too much. There's outside heroes and aliens and death and rebirth and all kinds of stuff, and they had 2 hours to play with.
Yeah, and a little bit of what do you call it, hindsight, like a lot of rewriting after the fact, like 3 years in, they're like, oh no, she's a clone, oh no, she's whatever. They do a lot of what do you call it, retconning. There's a lot of retconning in the Dark Phoenix thing too that makes it interesting.
So
But
I completely agree with you first off because so Tim, you and I have talked about this at great length. We have a screenwriting philosophy that I deeply believe in, which can be summed up in two quick words: who cares? Uh, Anytime anything is
yeah,
happening on screen in a movie, you just gotta wonder who cares. Why should I, a member of the U.S. populace that paid money to go see this movie, why the fuck should I care about what's happening right now on screen? And I think a great way to make people care about what's going on is you, especially in these comic book universes where everything is so insane and fantastic that's going on, is you ground it in humanity. So if you have to pick one of these threads to go with her in this movie, right? Like infighting among the mutants in general, um, aliens that are trying to hunt down this like power source from outside of planet Earth, and the family drama, ground it with the family drama. Like ground it with the trauma that Jean experienced in her past. Completely agree.
100%. I think just having rewatched it, the things that stuck out to me, and maybe this is all still just set up, was talking about maybe something that influenced them was The Last Stand, which is another X-Men movie, probably the second worst X-Men movie that's come out, where they make the Dark Phoenix more of this trauma. It has no aliens. There's no like external force. It they don't really explain it, but it seems like some dark psychological thing inside of Jean Grey that they really don't do a good job of exploring. But that is just, I'm just saying that they make the Phoenix Force an internal characteristic of her, as opposed to the external force that it is in this movie. And so maybe that influenced them in some way to make it an external force, which it really is in the comic books. But I don't think Last Stand did a good job with that. And I don't think they should have been afraid to make it another internal struggle with the character.
Oh,
And just brushing that
absolutely.
off is like, that's an easier movie mechanism. It's an
It's
easier thing to show on film. Makes more sense.
it almost feels like they took that angle in an earlier draft of the script because they're talking about in this beginning scene with Jean how wildly powerful Jean is. So like you already could have built a movie off of the theory that she's so much more powerful than all these other mutants and Charles Xavier had to lock some of that power away. But then on top of being told early in the movie that Jean is overly powerful, later on she gets possessed by like an energy source from
Yeah.
like space, and it's like, oh shit, so now she's double super powerful. Like it feels like it was left over. It seems like they wanted to go that way.
We also saw the Phoenix Force in the previous X-Men movie, Age of Apocalypse. She
Oh
is
shit, that's right.
she is the character that finally overcomes Apocalypse because she unlocks the Phoenix Force. And that's the end of the movie, is her releasing this power. So she already has this power in her, and then she goes into space and gets it. So I don't understand what's happening. It doesn't
That's
make
fucking
any sense,
garbage.
Kevin.
That's
So
terrible. I'm gonna agree outright. We've removed the space energy. We just get rid of the space energy.
the space is dumb. I don't know if you want to continue with your read through the plot. I know I do. Uh, that little kid in the car scene. But if you wanted to, do you want to go through the rest of it, the story, or should we just take it one step at a time?
I think let's just take it one step at a time because we already want to change so much about it. Oh man, I can't hear you, buddy.
A little bit.
There we go. Huh? I can hear you again. We got to get you a better internet connection. You need to be
You
hardwired into a modem.
hear me?
I can now. Oh, now you're back.
I'm back.
Yeah,
See, Colby used this, didn't he? And it worked fine.
he did. Yeah, I don't know if he had this thing like wired with Ethernet or what he did, but
Oh man, he was just sitting at the table where I'm sitting with his head conveniently blocking the microwave. I didn't want anyone to see the microwave, hence I'm sitting right in front of it like this. You have your fancy studio with your different clocks. I have my microwave in my kitchen.
We all have our backdrops.
I was so if we're going into there, what's the next thing that happens in the movie, which you thought probably correctly remembered as being the first thing in the movie, was them going into space to fight, I guess, to save some astronauts. Which I got to tell you, I kind of like the phone to the president. I think it's funny. I think it's cartoonish. I'm okay with it. Is Professor Xavier's ego being out of control and him having a phone that goes directly to the White House? I think it's funny.
I agree. I think it's cartoonish in the best way. I think I will say this one thing real quick. If we are grounding this movie on Gene's past trauma, I think we got to keep the car scene in the beginning. Oh boy. Oh, we froze again.
I think. God.
Oh no.
No.
Okay, you're back.
Is it working again?
Yeah, now I gotcha.
Gotcha. I keep saying my internet connection is unstable.
Maybe if we drop your video down to like 240p.
I don't know how to do that. I can stop my video. That's fine.
We got 2 people tuned in. Thank you very much for watching us go through and adjust our settings in Zoom.
I don't know. If it happens again, maybe I'll just turn my video off. That might be the way to go.
Yeah, that
and people can just look at you the whole time.
Sure. So to go back to what I was saying, I think if we're grounding the entire movie on Gene's past trauma, I think we got to keep the car scene at the very beginning.
I like the car scene. I don't love them going into space. I think it's kind of funny, but it is like just heightening. It's just like the most basic, like Improv 101 heightening, right? We see the X-Men on the ground, then we see them in the White House, and then we see them in space. It's like just like building 101. I don't know if we need to see them in space. I think it'd be more fun if it was like the Blob is robbing a bank, and then we see them fight the Blob.
Yeah, I think because then you have the thing too of like, look, if you still want to use the first scene as a showcase of something weird happens with Gene's powers that's unexplained, I think it holds more weight if the weird thing that happens with Gene's powers happens in a populated area with civilians around. So like taking it back to the reason that the first scene in Captain America Civil War was so impactful is because when Scarlet Witch fucks up and like throws the bomb up and the bomb goes off and it blows up part of a hospital, those were civilians being impacted. Whereas when Jean has like the power surge into her in space, they're in space. There's not really anything that can be impacted by this. They're just in a void. So I completely agree. Take them out of space. Keep the phone to the White House. Take them out of space.
Phone to the White House. There's a terrorist attack on whatever building on the National Bank. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, also, I really didn't want to nitpick this movie too much because like that could be its whole, that's a bad rabbit hole we could go into. But in the scenes in space in this movie, there's a scene where, first off, the entire concept of them going to space, there's a conversation where Charles Xavier turns to Beast and he's like, can the plane go to space? And Beast is like, it's a plane. And Professor X is like, but can the plane go to space? And then the plane goes to space. And it's super, this is not tested. Then the plane is in space and suddenly they're able to maneuver this plane that is meant to be in the Earth's atmosphere in space as if it was always meant to be a space shuttle. Frustration number one. Frustration number two, there's a scene where Jean needs to get teleported into the space shuttle that they're trying to save. And so to teleport her into there, Nightcrawler puts on an astronaut helmet, duct tapes it to himself so that, the astronaut helmet won't come off and he won't die in space. then teleports Jean into there and teleports away, but we can see that there are holes in the space shuttle. So the room that Jean is in without any protection is exposed to the void of space. There's no protection, there's no air, there's no nothing. She doesn't immediately freeze to death and explode. She's just fine out there. So frustrating. From the like I know this is a superhero movie, but if you take away like the little things, then it's like nuking the fridge in Indiana Jones. If we don't believe that anything could hurt these characters if they could be in space and not feel it. It's just, I just hate it.
And they're not right. And bring Quicksilver. If you bring Quicksilver, you don't even need Jean Grey. You really don't. He's in the space shuttle. You teleport in with Quicksilver. This dude moves so fast. In a second, he's moving all over the place. Already, he's a broken character. He's an entirely broken character, which, there's a reason why, Quicksilver died in the Avengers movies is because he's a Deus Ex Machina. They can't have him fighting Thanos because he could just go up and stab Thanos in the neck instantly. He instantly solves all of your problems. So like immediately he's a writing dilemma where you have to figure out a way to write him out of your movie like as soon as possible so that you can have a convincing whatever third act in the film. But why he's in the space shuttle, he can look over the entire space shuttle in a second. He could have found that guy and it's unnecessary. Nightcrawler, go back in there, bring Quicksilver and Jean Grey. You can carry them both. We've seen you just teleport 6 people in space. Bring them both. Quicksilver, go get that guy. Because then we have a scene that's like a whole minute. They have 30 seconds. That's 30 years for Quicksilver. They sent Nightcrawler in and he's got to like dodge debris in space. It's like, what the fuck is this? You just showed how to do this. Why would you deviate from that? Mystique's dropping the ball.
Everybody's dropping the ball.
She's even there. What's she going to do? Change to a bird? And Cyclops is the only one who crushed it. He's got like he's got like these eye beams in the spaceship, which I love.
Okay,
I was a huge fan of having
Cyclops
built into the
note. The spaceship eye beams, it's incredible. This is one of the things that we are like 100% lockstep about, which is that like that's such a good move to have like the Cyclops eye cannon drop out of the bottom of the X-Jet, because what it's doing is it's showing us that since the last time we saw these characters, they've been working together and learning how to take advantage of each other's powers. That's great. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that you want to show that these characters like exist in a narrative world. It's wonderful. I love it.
It's Captain America and Iron Man doing like the beam reflection thing.
Yeah.
It's that. It's just a detail that shows that they work together, that they trust each other, that they do all of that stuff. And it sounds dumb to be dissecting fight choreography in that way, but it totally, you're right. It's 100% a detail.
It takes us exactly right back to Captain America Civil War again, where we see that first big fight scene, and we're seeing that this ragtag group of Avengers that we were left with at the end of Age of Ultron is now a highly functional like strike force. So it's cool. It's like we see them operating in that opening scene of that movie, and everybody's like on point. Like it's clear they've rehearsed this over and over and over again. So we need, honestly, basically that exact scene, but with the X-Men and in a more grounded location than space. I think Blob robbing a bank, perfect. Let's do it. Like let's have him robbing Fort Knox or something.
So it needs to be, which I think is a email video again.
Oh, froze out again.
You see me?
I don't see you, but now I can hear you again.
Yeah, I just turned my video off.
Okay.
We'll see if that works. Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Let's see. What were we talking about? Oh yeah. So if we want to keep the president phone,
Definitely president phone.
We need something that is important enough that it's worth the president's attention. Which, I mean, space and NASA and a shuttle and Americans being lost in space, that is obviously worthy a call from the president. but would a simple bank robbery be worth a call from the president? Or do we not even need that? Do we need, if they save a bank, then maybe in Washington, D.C. or wherever, maybe then the president would want to meet them anyway, and they just meet the president. Maybe we don't need the president phone. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that works too. I think anything like president, you kind of need to keep in there because it's like an indicator of like the mutants now have mass appeal. Like the president of the United States wants to meet them. So
Yeah.
I say keep Prez.
I think we need to keep the president. I like the idea of them robbing a bank or something like that. I think we need to create some extreme trauma for Jean Grey, right? Like in this, she is in space. She is hit with a space cloud, and that is what releases her latent power. I think you're right with the idea that if she is pushed to her limits to save that could kill people, and she is like risking it all to save their lives, I think that's something that could push her to the edge too. But we would need, I don't know if the Blob does that. I don't know if the Blob on his own does that. Maybe we'd have to introduce another character or something with like, I don't know, like explosive power, or like they set off an explosion in the town would be good, but she needs to strain to contain some force. Maybe she keeps a building from collapsing. We need something that pushes her beyond her limits.
Or like a gas line. Like you can have like a character like the Blob, but still have something happen environmentally that would be a huge, huge, huge catastrophe, like a gas line exploding. So maybe she's struggling to contain that. I definitely think she needs to do something. We need to see Jean do something incredibly heroic in this opening scene because it's her save the cat moment. Like if Jean is going to be something that we want to see all the other characters fighting to save for the rest of the moment or for the rest of the movie, we need to see some kind of a moment that puts her like in the audience's good graces and makes her like in the audience's eyes worth spending all this time to save. Also, go with me on this. Let me know what you think about this. If we're keeping that car crash scene at the beginning, what if maybe a thing that triggers trauma for Jean again in that first opening battle is a car coming at her in a very similar way as the car crash, or like something involving like a car crash in that battle again, and we can kind of see her flash back to the car crash that Charles Xavier wiped from her memory.
I like that. So how do you feel about Xavier putting up the walls in her mind and tweaking with her memory? How do you feel about that as a plot device?
Huge into it. I am so into it. I think it's awesome. Like I think that's like a really cool trope to play with when you have psychic characters. And also with like Charles Xavier's arc, I would largely try to keep Charles Xavier's arc the same in this movie, where, you know, he's gotten very prideful and like his ego's gotten huge because suddenly the mutants are accepted by the populace. And he's really loving having a direct line to the president and being on the covers of magazines and stuff like that. So then to come back and put some of his actions in question, I think it's very cool.
I think it's super cool as well. I'm a big fan of it. I'm recalling, in Last Stand, which I've probably seen a dozen times too, is I think that was their origin story for the Phoenix as well.
Why have you seen Last Stand so many times?
I think I had it on DVD at some point. And again, I just love the X-Men, man. I think they're like my favorite group. Like I love the Avengers. But the X-Men just always had a place in my heart, man. Because the Avengers on their own can kick ass independently. Like they each have their own book, they each do their own thing. But the X-Men really are individually very weak, and they need each other in order to be functional.
Totally.
Which I think it's the charm of them.
I remember you told me at one point that part of the allure of the X-Men is that it would take like 3 X-Men just to make Thor.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's really cool because the whole, like, again, I think we share this too, is that part of the allure of these characters, part of what makes these superheroes interesting, isn't what makes them strong, it's what their weaknesses are. So the X-Men all have glaring weaknesses. Like Cyclops can shoot lasers out of his eyes, but he's otherwise just a dude.
Yeah. I think 100%. I think it's an example of how comic books, I guess, have evolved and changed. Cyclops now powered. Some guy who shoots laser beams from it can shoot laser beams from insanely strong. What can't this guy do? That's Colossus, that's Stops, that's Storm, like all rolled into one. I don't know. Even now, there's probably new X-Men. I guess the telekinetics on the X-Men. I don't know how nerdy you want to get about it, but definitely one Avenger. Next, compared to any Avenger, Cyclops, nothing. His powers are an inconvenience to him, and just a laser beam that really anyone can stop in the comics now. But initially, it's like a really complicated character when there aren't people with that kind of destructive energy, and you're left with a guy who can't like take off his glasses and see the world without destroying something he cares about, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting character that, I don't know, that seems what the X-Men is about to me. I agree.
Anyway,
I think that the suppressing of her memories is super fascinating. I think they dropped the ball with it in Last Stand a little bit, but they kind of made the Phoenix into this like alternate personality of hers, which I think we've kind of talked about before to some extent. The idea that he puts up these walls, so now she's kind of like schizophrenic, and maybe the Dark Phoenix is this other entity that is in her mind. And I like the idea maybe of the villain actually being like a psychic manifestation of this Dark Phoenix. Like for me, by the end of this movie, I want them fighting an evil Jean Grey, like normal Jean Grey, and I want evil Dark Phoenix Jean Grey physically manifesting outside of her body. And I want that to be the battle. And I'll tell you what, that is something I usually hate in these movies. I hate that, like in Logan, the bad guy is like evil Wolverine. I hate that shit. I think it's
come on. You don't like the analogy of your past coming back to haunt you, and you as an old person having to physically reckon with who you used to be?
I think it's an opportunity to be more creative, and I don't think they are. I think it works. I think it works independently. I think it is the way to go in this movie.
Yeah,
I think it's unusual. Agree. I think it's different. I think it's been done poorly in other movies, and it doesn't make any sense in other movies. But I think in this one, it would make complete sense.
So are you thinking, I think this could be a sticking point, because I feel like this is something that should be noted when we're talking about rewriting a comic movie, is that you're going to be up against legions of fans who are like hardcore fans of the Dark Phoenix saga and don't want to change anything. They just want to see the most faithful recreation of what they knew up on screen. So just because having a physical split between them isn't necessarily something that happened in the Dark Phoenix saga, it's happened before to Jean Grey, so there is precedent, but not in this one saga. Are you picturing Dark Phoenix as being like a shell around Jean Grey, and they have to they can't kill the Dark Phoenix because they would be killing Jean too? Or are you thinking we physically have Jean Grey fighting with the good guys, and we physically have Dark Phoenix as their villain?
By the end of the movie, I want good guy Jean Grey physically fighting a physical manifestation of the Dark Phoenix, like on the side of her team fighting this bad guy. That's what I was kind of picturing for this. I don't think it hasn't really been done in the comics, but the comics were retconned to basically say that the Dark Phoenix was never Jean Grey. The Dark Phoenix was a manifestation of the Dark Phoenix Force, and then the Phoenix Force became corrupted and became evil, and then it killed itself, and that's when they reveal that the real Jean Grey was like in a Phoenix Force cocoon at the bottom of a lake, and then she came back and she was normal. But before that, Madeline Pryor, who was like a clone of Jean Grey, came back, and she hooks up with Cyclops and has a kid, which is just, Mr. Sinister's attempt to like harvest and like breed the Cyclops like DNA, like it's a clusterfuck. It's a complete mess. If you want all that in your movie, like good for you, but it's it's too much. It's too much stuff. I don't think it's a leap to say that she is fighting a physical manifestation of the Phoenix Force that looks like her, because ultimately in this movie, we might disagree on this, I liked the train fight scene. I thought it was cool. I don't think it made a ton of sense. But the fighting is cool. And I think we need to build towards something where the X-Men as a team are just mowing through like faceless bad guys. Maybe not faceless bad guys, but we need to see Magneto just like ramming a piece of metal into some dude's neck. Like, I want that. I want Magneto just fucking people up. I want Nightcrawler slitting some dude's throat with his tail. That's what I want from this movie. And they gave it to you in like a little piece that didn't make any sense.
I think we want different movies.
What are you
Yeah.
thinking?
I'm thinking, okay, I'm okay with like a big fight, but for me, like I know you backed away from it, but the second I hear like faceless villain, I'm out because it takes me back to who cares. Like I hate anytime there's like a horde of faceless villains. This is one of my biggest problems with the Avengers movies. Is it's just like, who the fuck are these guys? They're the putties from Power Rangers. Like
Yeah.
the Avengers are just fighting a bunch of like clay people so that they can be shown like using devastating effects of their power, but without people being like, oh my God, that's a person. So like what I want though is I want when I'm watching a movie like this to go, oh my God, that's a person. So part of my idea for it, and I know we've talked about this after we both saw the movie for the first time, so maybe this is cheating for this podcast a little bit, but I'm thinking this. I want the people. I'm totally okay with like a giant, devastating mutant fight in the end of the movie. I think it should happen. I think that's like a great way to do a climax. But I think that it should be all like people. And I think it should be people who are like mind controlled by the Dark Phoenix. But I think it should be characters that we care about so that, you know, you have the good guys pulling their punches a little bit because they don't want to actually kill the people that they're fighting against, because the people they're fighting against are also people that we have seen. So even if it's not characters that we've seen in the movies so far, show us people from the comics. Magneto has a whole island of mutants on this, and they're basically entirely like made up for this movie. Toss in some cameos of characters that we haven't seen from the comics yet, especially because we know this is the last Fox X-Men movie. Toss in some character cameos there. Give us like a scene to get to know the people on this mutant island with Magneto, and then have those be the mind controlled people that we're fighting against at the very end.
Right. Right.
You wouldn't get
I agree.
Nightcrawler
I mean, I
slitting a
agree with
throat
this.
though.
I think that's cool. I do want Nightcrawler slitting a throat. And I gotta tell the coolest scene in all of the X-Men movies, well, the second coolest scene after Wolverine in the first one, like sliding out his claws into that dude's throat. You remember that one? When
Yeah.
we first meet Wolverine and he's in the bar and he cuts the guy's gun and then his claws slide. That's the coolest scene. Number 2 is Magneto hunting down these old Nazis in like the first like Fassbender movie. And he has the knife and he stabs the dude's hand and then he pulls it out and he throws it into the guy's neck and then pulls it back and stabs him. That's the coolest fucking thing that any of the X-Men do in any of the movies. And I love it. And there are scenes in this where Magneto is taking metal and like hurtling it through the bodies of people, and he's got guns and he's just unloading on shit. And I want that. I want Magneto to fight like a bad guy. I think it's awesome. And I think you don't get that if he is fighting good guys all the time. I don't know who that would be. I don't know if we want to see him just killing humans again. I don't know what would make sense to create that. Maybe we have to drop that for the story, but I kind of want it. I want it for Magneto. I want Magneto to do some ruthless villain shit.
I mean, you could do, look, this is a bad pitch. I already don't want to pitch this, but it could be zombies. That's, I think, probably too much. But like if Jean Grey is like, yeah, that's way too much. I don't even want to pitch that. I'm trying to think of who like the Dark Phoenix could be like mind controlling to fight against the X-Men. Yeah.
We have the island that Magneto's living on.
Oh, you know what we could
Magneto
do?
has the helmet that prevents him. Let me finish my thought first.
Okay, sorry.
Unless I'm freezing up.
You were
on
breaking up. You were
He-
breaking up. I didn't hear it.
I was breaking up. This is my fault. I blame the internet for all of this stuff. I'll figure it out for next time. Why don't we have Jean Grey mind controlling all of the mutants on the island fighting Magneto? Magneto's the only one she can't control. He's got the helmet, and now he has to fight all of the people that he's been taking care of this whole time. Like she's a
I love
telepath.
that.
As much as she's telekinetic, he has to do that. Now he's pissed off. Now he comes out of his island retreat, and now he's hunting her down. You know what we could have? I think we build build towards a fight at the X-Men's mansion where she is mind controlling all of the students. And then the X-Men have to fight all of these mind controlled students.
Yes,
How
that's
awesome
fucking
is
great.
that?
That's great. I think that's 100%. I think the X Mansion has to get destroyed. If we're talking about symbolism, I think we need to see a final fight that absolutely breaks down everything that the X Men stood for and shakes them to their core. I think you got to destroy the mansion. You got
We've
to
destroyed the
completely,
mansion in previous movies.
yeah, do it again.
I think the mansion should be destroyed every movie. Every
I
movie,
don't hate that.
every X-Men movie should end with them rebuilding the mansion.
Oh my god, I would love that. I think okay, so I completely agree. I think yeah, the scene like the scene at Magneto's island, that's exactly what should get him out of there, like out of the island retreat, as he put it. Completely agree. They should be fighting the students at the end. I think that's dope as fuck. Um, Also, if we do, I do want to find a way to give you your Magneto going full bad guy fight mode, and I'm thinking about it. And uh, what if this could be a tie into the beginning too? What if the scene at the beginning is like a terrorist group, like an anti-mutant terrorist group or something? Because God knows we have a lot of those in the comics. Um, it gives you the same justification where when you see the
Yes.
insane shit that's happening that Magneto's doing, he's doing it to Nazis. So you're like, fucking great. Um, but if it's like a terrorist group in the beginning, it sets the precedent for them being in the universe. And then if like Jean Grey is mind controlling terrorist group members later in the movie, you get to see Magneto just going all fucking out on him.
Wait, Magneto is with them fighting terrorists?
It could happen later in the movie. Maybe you see like footage of what Magneto has been doing with this like maybe that's what he's doing is the island retreat that he's on. He's with these people and I don't know. You know what? I'm just trying to find a way to get you an extremely violent Magneto fight scene, Tim. I'm
I
doing this
know.
for you.
I know, man. Man, I don't know how we get it. I don't know how we get it, but I want it. I want it. We got it against these faceless entities. You don't want these faceless entities. I
Mm-mm.
think that makes more sense. I think, I also, what, if they end up fighting the students, if we talk about the main roster rallying at some point, meeting up with Magneto, Beast, all these guys forming kind of like an alliance and being like, we got to go save Jean Grey. Instead of the train scene, it's them heading to the mansion to get. She's controlling the students. We could have a scene where Magneto makes his for everyone on the team, and like Storm wearing a Magneto helmet, and it's all just to prevent Jean Grey, the Phoenix, from like mind controlling them.
I think
Hear
it'd be
me and
sick.
froze.
I love it. You definitely chopped up in and out of there, but
Okay,
it's okay. We stuck
but
the
do you like
landing
that
on it.
idea of them all being Magneto helmets?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's like an insane, it's the kind of thing where you could drop it into a trailer and people would go, "What the fuck is that?" Like it's nuts. And it's not a move that I've actually seen despite being like Magneto's helmet being able to block psychic stuff is one of the only things in comics that hasn't been nitpicked and changed so much over time. So like it's kind of fascinating that no one's played with that trope more of like Magneto helmets block psychic shit. I think it's great.
I think,
Um,
and then you see a trailer with Cyclops wearing a Magneto helmet, and you have that moment of like, wait, what the fuck? And you don't
exactly.
see anything else, and then you watch the movie, and it's like, oh, they're all wearing them,
Yeah.
and they're all, and then they have to fight all these kids, and they're just knocking these kids out.
It's I like if that's your final shot of the trailer is like the X-Men team like assembling and like dropping into frame one by one, but they're all wearing the helmets. And then maybe it pans over to like Magneto and he leads the final charge. You're like,
Yeah,
holy shit, this movie's gonna be insane.
yeah.
What do you think? That made me think about this too. Do you think Professor X has to die at the end of this movie?
To die.
Oh, you broke up. Yeah, I'm asking. Do you think Professor X has to die at the end of this movie?
I'm going to say I don't think he does.
You don't think
Do
he
you
does?
think he does?
I kind of think he does.
Hmm.
Because I think we need to see either he or Gene has to die. Somebody's got to die.
No, I think Gene 100% has to die. Gene 100% is dead at the end of this movie.
Yeah. I'm trying to decide if I want Professor X to die at the end of it too.
I think Mystique dies so we don't need another X-Men to die. I think that's the mechanism. I think Jennifer
I don't
Lawrence
think we
didn't
need
want to
Mystique
be
to
in this
die.
movie.
Yeah.
I think Jennifer Lawrence did not want to be in this movie, so they kill her off pretty early. And I think that's like something that we'd have to factor into. It's like Jennifer Lawrence needs to get out of this movie like 20 minutes in. She's put in 1 week of work. She's not sticking around for the whole thing.
Put her in a coma. Just have her be in a coma. Have her get like knocked out in the opening battle or something. I hate Mystique dying in this movie. I think that's a bad move. It's not as impactful as if you had like, I don't know, like Professor X die. Like Mystique I want to have around in later movies, but with Professor X specifically, it's like if we're having part of the plot of this movie be that he's atoning for having gone too far in the past and like meddled with the X-Men's minds, kind of like playing with the idea of, oh shit, if you did that to Jean, did you suppress anything in my brain? Like the distrust and everything there. I think one, he dies, two, he is like completely excommunicated. And that is with a capital X and then a hyphen and then communicated.
Professor X.
Mm-hmm.
I think the movie can end. I think it does end correct in that mindset of him being banished. I think, and he can't be around. He has to leave.
And I'm almost thinking there have been multiple times in the comics when Magneto has actually been the leader of the X-Men. I think that's a pretty fitting, I think that would be a pretty fitting narrative arc for Fassbender's Magneto overall to end up leading the X-Men in Charles Xavier's place by the end of this movie. What do you think?
I think that's very cool. I think it's very cool. I think he's killed too many people. I think he's a fucking terrorist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he is known to be
No,
a
if it'd be the
terrorist.
best thing being running the school. He's a known terrorist who's wanted by the government, and their uneasy alliance between him and the United States is to give him an island of his own where he can stay away, and they have like a mutual thing. I don't know if it would work. I like the idea of Xavier like living with him on the island. I like the idea of him building his own school. I like the idea of maybe X-Men leaving to go stay with Magneto. Like, I love the idea of him running Geneva. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. You mean Genosha?
Genosha, yeah. Geneva. The Genosha Convention is what I was thinking of.
Oh man.
I think you're right. I think he becomes, and we kind of see that at the beginning of the movie, as he like becomes like a leader and a hero to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that a lot.
So at the end of the movie, who do you see leading? I think I don't know if I buy all of the X-Men going and living with Magneto on this island in the middle of nowhere.
I don't. I can see a couple people going.
I could definitely see a couple people going. So if we're going with the idea of finishing the third act with the X-Mansion destroyed, Jean Grey definitely dead. I like Charles Xavier living with Magneto on that other island. Scott in these movies is like 16, so he wouldn't be leading it. I think I would like seeing it with either Beast or Mystique running the school.
Beast does run the school at the end of this one.
Oh shit, that's right.
Yeah, and I like that. I think Mystique could do it too. I think I would like Mystique doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd prefer Mystique doing it because I'm not a fan of Beast. I don't really like this Beast guy. I don't know. I get that his motivation is that this woman that he loves is killed. But yeah, why is Mystique? Who cares?
Yeah.
Also, Mystique, right before she dies, tells Beast that she loves him. Like, what the fuck is that? That's garbage. I hated that so much. I was like, no, you've been blowing this guy off for 4 movies. You don't love this guy. It's crap. That's crap. I hate it. I get that he would love her and she doesn't reciprocate. That's fine. You know, if his motivation is that he just like somebody murdered the love of his life. I was also wondering, why doesn't Jean Grey kill her dad?
Oh yeah.
She
I
finally
think
finds out she has a dad and she kills him.
so. I think what you do with that scene is, and we're pinballing back here. I think this is kind of that's what would you say, like probably opening of the second act. I'm trying to figure out when that scene takes place in the movie.
She has her power. I mean, it's like 40 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
she goes to visit her dad, who she finds out is alive. She meets him and she realizes that it was his choice not to see her because she killed his wife. And the father blames his daughter for that. And he thinks she's a freak. And she starts to realize this, and it looks like she's going to attack him. And that's when the X-Men shows up. They fight. She injures Quicksilver, which prevents him from being in the rest of the movie and deprives us of the iconic Quicksilver scene, which we need. And I demand in this movie, and it's an atrocity that they didn't do it. That should have prevented the movie from being made right away.
Yeah, flat out. The closest thing we get to the Quicksilver scene is him with the astronauts, and we don't even get any classic rock playing over it. If you played like a Bowie song, if he was like, okay, yeah, I'll go save the astronauts, and he like turns on his headphones and there's like, I don't know, like a fucking David Bowie song playing. Great, awesome, go for it. But yeah, we got to get a Quicksilver scene. You got to have at least one Quicksilver scene somewhere in here. I think Jean has to kill her dad. I think you keep the scene where she goes back and she finds out that her dad wasn't killed. He just gave her up and has been completely like out of her life. I think we keep that because that's like a good emotional push for her. But I think that's the thing that is like her turning point to become a villain, is the actual act of killing her father would then push her, the Dark Phoenix version of her, into like the villain territory. I think you keep that.
Yeah. I agree. My connection is still unstable. Is it getting any better? Maybe. Who knows?
Probably not. We'll get it for the next one. For Christmas, I'm getting you the internet.
That would be a great gift.
You're going to love it, man. You don't even need AOL minutes anymore.
Let's see. Yes, I agree. I think that's cool. I think it's like, I get that you don't want Quicksilver in this movie. This is my pitch for the fun Quicksilver fight scene. What if it is, and I guess this is similar to what we've seen before, because the ones he's done, he did one in a vault to free Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did one in the X Mansion when it was blowing up and he was throwing kids out of the mansion, which is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mid-explosion. That's fun. What if first thing they do when they show up is they get a Magneto hat like on Quicksilver, and then he's been injured. Maybe he's injured fighting Jean Grey, so he's like out of the movie, or they have him on like the jet or something like that. But either way, we show up with like a one-legged Quicksilver in the hat, like running through the mansion, trying to knock out kids who are all using their superpowers to stop him.
Oh my God. I don't know. I think that's a hard sell is, okay, yeah, we're going to have this guy. He's going to be running around. He's an adult. He's going to be punching children. I think that's a hard sell in a superhero movie.
He's incapacitating them so they can't, because that's the fight, right? Is they're fighting these students and they have to beat the students in a way that won't hurt them.
Tim, I gotta say, I'm shocked that your perspective on this is not, we got to get Nightcrawler in there and he's slitting all the kids' throats.
That one kid, we see one kid like stick gum to the bottom of his desk earlier in the movie, and that's the kid Nightcrawler throat slashes.
Oh my God. Ah, shit. I do like the idea of you got to deal with the Quicksilver problem, because he's just too much. I like the idea. I think like one of our first ideas that we had for what you do with Quicksilver is I think we had the idea of he's in a coma following like the first battle. I keep pitching coma as a thing for people, but it's a convenient way to get him out. Half the
cast should be in a coma.
I think we get one coma. I think every movie has a one coma.
But this movie already has a coma. It's the actor playing Beast is basically in a coma for the whole movie.
Oh man. He really does. Nicholas Holt, don't at us. I think, you have, I like the idea that we had previously of Quicksilver's in some kind of an incapacitated state early in the movie. I think, yeah, maybe you have like a broken leg or something. Amputated would be insane. I think you can do it with like, he like
Wow.
tore his Achilles tendon or something insane, like a running injury. Um, and then he has to do something to overcome that pain in the final battle. I love the idea of like to kind of permanently deal with the Quicksilver problem. And again, because this is the last Fox X-Men movie and they knew that going into it, um, I think maybe you have him do like the sports movie trope of Quicksilver permanently blows out a knee or something like that. Like he does something that is like, that this is like the one final pass and he's got to rocket this thing off and it like blows his elbow. Give me that, but for Quicksilver, where like
Yeah.
we just see his legs buckle at the end of it.
Yeah, man,
And
I
the
think that's
song's
great.
got to be fucking badass, whatever the song is.
I think that's cool. What do you think the Quicksilver fight should be? Do you have an idea for a slow motion thing?
You could do it in the beginning. You could have it be part of the beginning opening of the movie. That's like a fun opening to get people into like, hey, you're watching a superhero movie. We're gonna have a fun moment with these like superpowered characters. And if he's on the team, we would have to see his powers in some form anyway. Um, so maybe that could be a thing where like Quicksilver is running to, if it's like armed robbery, he's like running and he's picking all the bullets out of the air that somebody has fired out of like a submachine gun or something.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe he like something happens and he trips and he rams like full force into a gas line, and like that's what causes the leak that Jean has to fix or something. Um, so maybe there's that, and then he inhales a lot of gas that puts him in a coma. Or you could do. I think I like that in the beginning. I like having like him plucking the bullets out of the air in the first scene.
You'd
Something
rather
has
have
to
him at the beginning.
incapacitate him.
You think him just plucking bullets out of this air is a big enough? We're talking about the big Quicksilver slow motion sequence in the movie, and he's already kind of done
It's
the
got to
bullets. He
be in
did
the
the bullets
final
thing in
act.
the front one. I don't know if it needs to be in the final act, but the other ones were in like the middle of the movie.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
think
if it
it's got to
needs to be
be.
in the final. I think it can open the movie. I think you're right. It could be while fighting Jean Grey, but I think it needs to be bigger than an explosion ripping a school apart and him running faster than the school is exploding. Like we need something else like that.
Well,
Not
you got
another
to go
explosion.
bigger, or you go smaller, right? So it's like you either
Right.
got to go really big, like bigger than we've ever seen, or smaller than we've ever seen. So bigger than we've ever seen would have to be like, Jesus, how do you top a school exploding and him rushing all the kids out? Like the scope of the explosion and the scope of how many people he saved is pretty remarkable.
I'm thinking of like building collapsing. Like it needs to be something that like he is like we see something moving as he's moving that's moving almost as fast as he is. Like that's what makes it fun. The explosion, we see the explosion ripping out. Like we could see the building like collapsing, like slowly getting thinner and thinner, and him having to like duck down to like get under it or whatever to get people out. I don't know. I think we need something maybe like water like crashes through the roof or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. There needs to be some sort of like impending doom, like a moving train or like moving cars or something falling. There needs to be something that he's
Yeah.
moving faster than.
Yeah. I mean, we're giving bullets faster than a bullet. It's really hard to like top where they're at. I understand why they had so much trouble with Quicksilver in this one. Um, he could be disassembling something. Like if a wall is crashing, he could disassemble it brick by brick, like it's made of Legos. Same thing with like a car. We could see him like taking a car apart piece by piece so that
What
it
if he
doesn't hit
built
somebody.
a wall or something or like built a car?
Oh, that's pretty fun. If he built a wall and made somebody smash into this wall, that would be a super fun way. Like if a villain's trying to run away, like if it's like the blob, right? If we stick on this idea of it's the blob, if the blob turns and he's trying to run away, if no matter what direction he tries to run, Quicksilver keeps building a wall that he has to crash through, and the blob is just like, ah, uh,
Yeah.
I like that. And like if he decides to like drop a whole house on him, he could like build a house but also have taken the time to do like the plumbing system.
Oh man,
That's
I mean,
probably a little overpowered.
if Jean Grey dropped a whole building with people in it, like picked up a skyscraper and then dropped the skyscraper like on something, and Quicksilver has to run through a falling building and like rescue people, like that's something. That'd be crazy.
That's pretty good. I do like that.
And you see the bottom of the building hit and like start to like, collapse or like cave in on itself, so the building's getting smaller and turning into rubble like as he's running through it. I guess that's very similar, but I don't know. Are we close? I mean, we've gone till how long does this show go? Because I'm
I
realizing
think
we're scratching the surface on this.
I think we're pretty much at time. So this is like it's been an hour. We're at 1 p.m. Um, I think maybe we call it for today. We circle back and we do another one of these things.
I think we totally could. I think I'd love to do them for another movie. Do you want to do like a recap of our movie so far?
Yeah, let's do it. You
Like
want
a
to take
real
it?
quick synopsis. I guess this all proves that this is also much harder than than it looks. Writing movies isn't the easiest thing in the world.
Well, to be fair, we only put an hour against it.
We,
Ostensibly, the people who actually wrote this had more time than this. But I
I,
still think that we've done a decent amount of punch up in this. I would say overall, our plot synopsis is this, right? We're going to localize the entire thing on Jean's past trauma, have the power of the Dark Phoenix be entirely inside of Jean. So we're not doing any shit with space. We're not doing any of that. We're keeping it localized here on Earth and making it like a family drama with the X-Men. So Jean Grey, traumatic event, her powers manifest when she's a little kid and accidentally kill her mom. She thinks kills her dad. Charles Xavier adopts her, puts up mental blocks to stop her from accessing the full extent of her powers. Title sequence. We come in. There's like a battle that the X-Men are doing. There's like a whole huge event. We see the X-Men operating as a team. Something goes wrong. Jean has to go like way far beyond where she's normally accessed her powers. Doing so disables the blocks that Charles put up and makes her flash back to her childhood and all the traumatic things that happen and kind of unleash this part of her that's been blocked away and it's kind of festered into becoming its own entity called the Dark Phoenix. Um, then, yeah, the X-Men get freaked out that Charles blocked part of Jean's mind. They don't really trust Charles Xavier. Jean leaves on like a journey of self-discovery, ends up coming across her dad, kills her dad because she didn't realize that he was alive and she feels so betrayed by him. That's like her turning point to go full villain. I think we're keeping the part where she seeks out Magneto for solace and finds this like island retreat where Magneto's trying to be a pacifist.
yes.
But something insane happens and she destroys the whole world that Magneto has built there. So now Magneto's on a warpath and he wants to take down Jean. We haven't really touched what happens next to really like kick off the events of like the climax of the movie, but something really bad happens and Jean turns into like this whole problem that the X-Men have to address. And then final battle, the X-Men are like torn apart as they have to destroy this like evil version of Jean. At the end of it, the X-Mansion's destroyed, Jean's dead, Professor X is excommunicated from the X-Men, and that's what we have so far.
Yeah. And Jean Grey is at some point rejects the Dark Phoenix. The Dark Phoenix manifests as like its own entity that she helps the X-Men destroy. I think sacrificing herself to destroy this thing and save her friends ultimately. So we have a redemptive end for her.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's pretty much it. I think, mind controlling the island. I think her fighting all the mutants on Magneto's island. I think that could have been some, like, why is she fighting helicopters? Like, let's see her fight the guy with the horns on his head.
Yeah.
I want that stuff. I want
Let's see her fight a mutant
powers.
that turns into a helicopter.
I mean, that would be awesome. A unicorn, a person with blade hands. And the other thing I was thinking is like, if we're seeing this thing with her at the beginning, I wouldn't mind seeing Professor Xavier putting these blocks in her head. I don't know if we need it, but I think, even if it's a minute of her waking up in the night crying and him saying, I can help, and like going into her mind and we see him locking those memories away and then her smiling And then we see the motivation of like, it is, in his mind, it's a selfless act.
Yeah.
I think that could be good too, but
I agree.
I think we made a lot of progress. I think we fixed the movie entirely.
Yeah, I do too.
I think we should be paid the big bucks to do this. So
Look, I think we left it better than we found it, which is the Boy Scout way.
yes.
All right. Well, hey, Tim, thank you very much for joining me today. Everybody, thank you very much for tuning in and listening. This has been the first edition of the Rewritables. See you next time.
Later. Bye.